Hey class, welcome back. We are starting section 3.2, compound statements and connectives. And that in your book is on page 111. Also, the notes should be found on Google Classroom for this section. So to review or recap a little bit from last section, we talked about what a statement is. A statement is something that is true or false, but not both at the same time. And so to do a little bit of basic there, a simple statement is only going to convey one idea. And if we put a couple of those together, then what we get is a compound statement. So combining two or more simple statements. And how do we combine those things is what we're going to actually talk about today. So we're going to combine them with some connective words like and, or, if and then, and if and only if. So these are the four main ones that we're going to talk about, but some of these have some extra words that we'll go through, and they're in some of the tables in the book, so that if you read those words, you'll also know that they have the same meaning, and then they would use the same symbolization. All right, so the first one is the and statement. The and statement has a symbol that looks like this. This is called a caret. Maybe you've seen it when you were on your calculator and it said X and you raise it to a power of 3. Okay. So maybe you have seen it when you were in English class and you were writing a paper and somebody says, no, that's not what you should use. This is what you should use instead. And then they show you down here the caret and then they write what you should write up there. So either way, we're going to use it in a new context here. So an and is also called a conjunction. The caret is the symbol. And so we're going to practice putting them in symbolic form today. And really, just like previously, the negation symbol, remember, is this tilde. We call it squiggly in class sometimes, but that's what you're looking for negation. And now we're going to get a whole bunch of other new symbols today. So the first part of this says it is 5 p.m. It is after 5 p.m. That's our P sentence. And our Q sentence, they are working. And so we want to write the symbolic statement that says it is after 5 p.m. and they are working. So it is after 5 p.m. is our P. And I'm having trouble with my board here. Erase. Let's see if we can get that off of there. All right. So P. I dropped my pen earlier today, so we'll try it on here. P and they are working is going to be Q. So P and Q is the symbols for this one. This one says it is after 5 p.m. and they are not working. So this time it will be P and not Q. And there's our squiggly there. Okay. All right, let's try checkpoint 1. If you want to pause your video here and then come back to it. Checkpoint 1 is at the top of page 112. And it says they are working and it is after 5 p.m. So this time we've switched some sentences. They are working is now Q. And it is after 5 p.m. So that's our P. And then the second one in checkpoint 1 says it is not after 5 p.m. So this time it is a tilde P and they are working. So that's our Q. And so there's our B part for checkpoint 1. All right. Moving on, their next one is an or statement. This is the symbol for or. It looks like the letter V. It's actually not a V, but how you can call it a V. While we're talking about this stuff, I will understand what you're saying. It is known as a disjunction. And there's two types. One is exclusive and one is inclusive. So if you remember back to when we talked about sets, we had Venn diagrams. If it was or, it meant all of this stuff. Well, now we're going to break that up into two parts. Exclusive means it's really one or the other. So if your mom offers you a candy bar and she says, do you want the Kit Kat or the Snickers? She really doesn't expect you to take both, okay? But you can also make it inclusive, and that would mean one or the other or both. And it depends on probably the context of the story or the sentence, and that will determine whether you're just talking individually, one or the other, or one or the other or both, okay? Exclusive, inclusive. All right, so let's look at some examples. P says the bill receives majority approval. Q says the bill becomes a law. So this one, the bill receives majority approval is P, or the bill becomes a law. So P, V, Q, so what we got. The second one says the bill receives majority approval, same thing, or the bill does not become a law. So now we got a tilde and a Q. All right. So if you want to pause the video and try checkpoint 2, checkpoint 2 is in the middle of page 113, and then you can come back. All right, so when you come back here, it says you graduate or you satisfy the math requirements. So you graduate is P, or you satisfy the math requirements. B part says you satisfy the math requirements, so that one's Q, or you do not graduate. So a tilde, excuse that, and a P. All right, so there's your checkpoint 2s with the or disjunction. Okay, the next one here is the if-then statement. So the compound if-then is an arrow. This arrow always points to the right. So always goes this way. The if part is in front, and the then part is after the arrow. That on there. All right. And this one is called a conditional statement. Now, here's some other words. The if part is called the antecedent. The then part is called the consequent. So really, consequences happen after you've done something. So you have to think about consequences as the then after you've done the if. Okay. All right, so a person is a father is our P statement. A person is male is our Q statement. If a person is a father, then that person is male. So if a person is a father is P, arrow, then he's male, Q. All right, this one says if a person is male, then the person is a father. So now we've switched our stuff, but if always comes first, arrow, P. And this last one says if a person is not male, so that would be a tilde, Q. And then that person is not a father, so not P. And that's that one. Okay. All right, so this is checkpoint 3 and checkpoint 4. So I'm going to pause and let you do those. But before that, I want to point out on your notes, below number 10, it says helpful information, and there are some tables listed there. 3.4 on page 112 shows you some other words that can be used like and. For example, but, yet, and nevertheless. So those are the examples that you give you but you would still use the and symbol. Then the next table is 3.5, and if you'll write out beside 3.5 on your notes there, put checkpoint 4, and that way you'll know which one is referring to the table 3.5. And if we look at that before you go and do checkpoint 4, it says, these are some if-then statements. These are words that we don't use all the time or at all. You've got P is sufficient for Q, and Q is necessary for P. Those words are not something that we would speak in our English language very often. However, you still need to know what they mean. So when you're talking about those, pause, read the sentence a couple times, break it down. But remember, in an if-then statement, remember your consequence is what happens after the if part happens. So between the two parts, no matter how in the English sentence it's written, try to decide, is it if or is it a then? Did it come before or did it come after? This one is because of the if statement. So those are things that you can think about when you do those. All right. So I'm going to pause here, let you pause your video, come back, and you can check checkpoint 3 and checkpoint 4. So checkpoint 3 says, if a person is not a father, then that person is not a male. So you should have said not P, arrow, not Q. All right. And then the second one says, if a person is a male, then that person is not a father. So now we have the positive of Q, if Q, then not P, not a father. So there's checkpoint 3 for that one. And then we're going to look at checkpoint 4. And it's on page 115, and it says, suffering huge budget deficits is necessary for not controlling military spending. So between the words suffering huge budget deficits or the words controlling military spending, which one of those is the outcome? Which one of those is the consequent? So are you going to suffer huge budget deficits, or are you going to suffer not controlling military spending? And if you think about those two things, this one says it's necessary that if I don't control my military spending, then I'm going to suffer huge budget deficits. So this one becomes the negation of Q. If I don't do this part, then I'm not going to, or I am going to suffer huge budget deficits. So this one is your checkpoint 4. All right, and that was just trying to look at the words and see which one of these is the after effects of the if statement. All right. Last one here is if and only if statements. So this one is called a biconditional. Biconditional. It has an arrow that goes both directions. When you write this, you're going to write it in the English sentence from left to right. There is no, like in the if then, remember the if always had to come first and then the then. So in the if and only if statements, it doesn't matter. You're just going to read from left to right and write it from left to right. This is not a typo. This is an IFF, and it's abbreviation for if and only if. So if you see this or write this, make sure that you mean it is for if and only if. This phrase is going to go in the middle of the sentence. P, if and only if. Q, so you wouldn't start a sentence with this phrase. So let's look at example 5 here. It's at the top of page 116, and it says the word is set, and the word has 464 meanings. So we're going to write in symbols. The word is set if and only if the word has 464 meanings. So the word is set is our P. If and only if is a double arrow. And the word has 464 meanings, which is quite a few. And that's our Q. This one says the word does not have 464 meanings if and only if the word is not set. So now we're going to negate the Q if and only if not set. So we're going to negate the P part also. And there's that one. Okay. All right. You guys try checkpoint 5 and then come back and check it. So checkpoint 5 says the word is run. The word has 396 meanings. The word has 396 meanings if and only if the word is run. So this one's going to say Q first, Q, double arrow, P. B part says the word is not run if and only if the word does not have 396 meanings. So this one is the negation of P if and only if, so double arrow, the negation of Q. All right, so there's your A and there's your B. All right. So the only other thing on the notes for right now, what I want you to look at is the tables. And I've pointed out the 3.4 was for and so they were different ways to have the and. 3.5 are different ways of saying if then. And then 3.7, which is at the bottom of 116, are different ways of saying if and only if with your double arrow. Now, this one on 3.8 is really just a culmination. So it's a go-to easy reference table that you can use if you have trouble remembering any of these. Then it has all of them on there. So those are some tables that you can reference and use as you go through some of these practice problems. All right, so if you've got your, or if you need to look at the book there, we're going to stop in the lesson and I'm going to give you some problems in the back, and then tomorrow or the next day, the next lesson will be the second part of section 3.2. So here are your problems, page 120. You're going to do 2 through 16 even, 28, 30, and then 34 through 48 even. And I'll see you back for the next lesson.